Introductory Concepts in American Government. What are voting restrictions? Should everyone have the right to vote in a democracy? Can the right to vote be limited under certain circumstances? Are voter identification laws necessary to prevent voter fraud or excessive restrictions on some voters? Each of these questions is a matter of debate within the context of the right to vote in a democratic society. Would you have been able to vote in the earliest presidential elections? When the Constitution of the United States was ratified, only white, property-owning males were allowed to vote. Eventually, the franchise would be expanded to include African American men, women, and 18-year-olds, although that process would be a long and difficult one. Following the end of the Civil War, in 1870, Congress passed the 15th Amendment, which stated that the right to vote could not be denied based on a man's color, ethnicity, or his condition of previous servitude. In addition, Congress passed the Enforcement Act of 1870, which helped to bolster the 15th Amendment by assigning penalties, including jail time, to anyone who attempted to interfere with an individual's right to vote. However, with the election of Rutherford B. Hayes in 1876, the Reconstruction era came to an abrupt end, and many of the protections provided to newly freed slaves were rolled back. Most notably, federal troops who had been deployed in southern states to help shield African Americans from physical attacks were withdrawn, leading to targeted action on the part of southern states. With the end of Reconstruction, a number of southern states passed laws known as Jim Crow that required the strict separation of the races. They also found creative ways of preventing African Americans from voting, including white primaries, literacy tests, poll taxes, and the grandfather clause. White primaries were primary elections where only white voters could participate, while literacy tests were tests used to determine who was eligible to vote and were designed so that few African Americans would pass. Like literacy tests, poll taxes were designed specifically to exclude poor African Americans, levying taxes on persons as a condition of voting. Finally, the grandfather clause exempted voters from certain conditions, such as poll taxes and literacy tests, if they or their ancestors were eligible to vote before 1870. Because the 15th Amendment wasn't passed until 1870, it was unlikely that the ancestors of most African Americans would have been eligible to vote before that date. In 1923, the Supreme Court declared white primaries unconstitutional, arguing that they violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. However, many southern states continued to use other methods, including poll taxes and literacy tests, to prevent African Americans from voting well into the 1960s. Finally, in 1965, Congress passed the Voting Rights Act. The Voting Rights Act had several important clauses. First, it eliminated poll taxes, literacy tests, and the grandfather clause. Secondly, it mandated federal intervention in any county where less than 50% of eligible voters were registered. And finally, the Voting Rights Act required selected counties and states to receive pre-clearance before they pass any laws that would impact voting procedures or the redrawing of district lines. In the 2013 case of Shelby v. Holder, the Supreme Court struck down Section 4B of the Voting Rights Act, which required federal intervention in any county or state where less than 50% of eligible African Americans were registered to vote. Because of the court's decision, Section 5, which required pre-clearance, cannot be enforced until the Congress devises a new formula. In the aftermath of Shelby v. Holder, 2013, states have become much more active in shaping voter laws. A number of states, such as Arizona, North Carolina, Texas, and Wisconsin, passed voter ID laws, which require voters to present a state-issued photo identification to vote. These laws are undergoing legal scrutiny, And in the summer of 2016, federal appellate judges prohibited the enforcement of voter ID laws deemed discriminatory in North Carolina, Wisconsin, and Texas. In summary, the 15th Amendment passed in 1870 stated that the right to vote could not be denied based on race, creed, or condition of previous servitude. Many states, however, sought to evade the 15th Amendment by establishing a number of voting restrictions, including white primaries, literacy tests, poll taxes, and the grandfather clause. These restrictions were eliminated with the passage of the Voting Rights Act in 1965. While the Voting Rights Act helped to increase voting among African Americans, the Supreme Court would undo the most important clause of the law in 2013, in the case of Shelby versus Holder.